The Field of 68 Media Network presents Red is the New Orange, a Syracuse basketball podcast.
Vince intercepts a pass, breakaway for the freshman guard, he flies and slams! Aerial assault from Judah Mintz.
Looking to go back door to Bell, they get it to him near corner three, knocks it down! Chris Bell, the sharpshooter.
Bringing you everything you need to know out of the 315.
Up top, Williams surges ahead, up with the right hand and in. A pretty up and under move from Benny Williams to beat his man.
Over to Taylor. He skips into the lane, puts up a floater, and drops in.
Let's get it started with your hosts, Ian Unsworth and Johnny Gadamowitz.
We are back after a little holiday hiatus. Ian Unsworth, Johnny Gadamowitz. You know what it is. It's Red is the New Orange. A Field of 68 podcast. Drop us a follow, F68_Cuse on Twitter. He's at Johnny G. Witz. I'm at IUnzy. That's UNZY _ on Twitter. If you're looking for us on YouTube, the Field of 68 Podcast Network is where you'll find us, along with plenty of other great team podcasts for your aunts, uncles, cousins, whoever's visiting your home for the holidays that isn't an Orange fan. We got you covered, along with the Field of 68's main channel that's got After Dark, as some of Rob Doster, Terrence Oglesby, John Fanta, Jeff Goodman, and the like, spouting off about the best of college basketball. We're going to get into it here right away because, Johnny, we've got a great conversation to bring to the people with Mike Waters of the Post-Standard and Syracuse.com. He's been around for a long time, and he knows Syracuse basketball inside and out. So we're getting his confidence ratings on some mid-season takes after the non-conference slate. To wrap up that non-conference slate, Syracuse played Niagara last Thursday, the 21st. I'm looking on KenPom here, Johnny, and the win meter, or KenPom's projected to win, is flat. Literally just this, flat line. Syracuse was supposed to win this game. The Orange won this game. However, not in super convincing fashion, because the walk-ons were not in, and the Orange were outscored 26-25 in the last 10 minutes of the game. So another one of these non-conference wins that just leaves a bit of a question mark when it's all said and done.
I think question mark is a good way to phrase it, Ian. I think you allow 43 points in the second half to a team with the resume and quality that Niagara brings to the table this year. That's a problem. And as we'll talk about with Mike coming up shortly, Red Autry was certainly not afraid to address that really from the jump of his post-game press conference. One thing, though, that really concerns me, even beyond the 43 points allowed in half number two, and sort of a contributing factor to those 43 points, is the fact that yet again, it was another game where this team did not show an ability to get after it in the rebounding battle. Right? You would have asked both me and you going into this game, hey, do you think Syracuse is a squad that, you know, when they go up against the Purple Eagles could finish the game plus 10, plus 15 on the glass? I would have said, absolutely. All told, +1. They almost got out-rebounded by this Niagara squad.
We got a Gadamowitzism like about 2 minutes in, folks. We've already got an all told on the board. Put it on the board.
All told. Chalk it up. There's all told. But yes, even with Malik Brown's smaller size, seeing more minutes, you have to create some breathing room on the glass. This team hasn't really shown an ability to do it. That could be a very big problem moving forward for Syracuse.
Niagara's 7-footer Harlan Oha played 11 minutes and only got 2 rebounds. So it wasn't like he was wrecking shop. My concern, if we're starting there, is Luke Bumble. It sounded like, he was the only guy scoring in the first half for Niagara, and Red said as much at halftime. We got to stop the one guy that's making shots. But I think he had 17 of his 26 in the first half, or something. He had made 5 threes before the under 4 media timeout. And that was the only thing keeping Niagara remotely close in the first half, where the halftime score was 38-28.
They were up 10. Yeah, if he doesn't have that first half, Syracuse could have been up 16 or 17, maybe even 20 at the break.
And it never felt like a game. let's be clear here. This wasn't a game where Niagara pulled it down to 4 and Syracuse made this game was not close, but it shouldn't have even been this close. That's the only reason Johnny and I are up in arms here to start. Let's go to the positive though, because it's always
we got to
nice
give the glass half full.
We should be grateful and thankful around the holidays, and you know what? We should probably relax a little bit on this team because at the end of the day, 9-3, no losses where you're overly concerned, no wins where you're super optimistic. And again, Mike Waters will give us his thoughts on that. But Judah's 7 for 12. Malik has a fantastic game. That's the highlight performance. Yes, Quadir Copeland is good again, and he continues to be a driving force for this team in the second half with 8 assists. But Malik Brown was the star of the show against Niagara because he was almost perfect. Did not miss from the field. Made a 3, just a wide open 3-pointer. Like Jesse Edwards' 3-pointer last year.
Yeah, one of those
as the shot clock wound down, like he had to take that 3.
Right.
Malik Brown just why not me? Why not
extend the range a little bit, keep the defense honest.
But 10 rebounds as well, and this just is, I think, a continuation of the fantastic non-conference slate Malik Brown has had. He makes winning plays, and there's never really a spot where he has been a real major issue for this team, right? I know I was pretty critical of him when we did our pick and roll coverage breakdown, but those lapses have gone away as the Syracuse season has continued, and it just shows how quick of a learner he is. And again, it exemplifies why he was on the floor so early last year.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Ian. I'll zoom out a little bit more. Malik Brown fits into this narrative perfectly. I'm going to go with, look, this is now 2 straight games where this Syracuse team has put up 40-plus bench points. Obviously, Brown is the headliner there, but the fact that this team has so many different guys they can rely on, even guys that are not in the starting lineup, that can step in and can give you offensive production. All these discussions we've had about starting lineups, who should be seeing lion's share of the minutes, make no mistake, we might frame it in a little bit of a negative light. These are good problems to have. Kyle Cuff's giving you 7 points off the bench in 18 minutes. You take that and you run with it. Even Benny, 6 and 12 minutes on 2 of 4, right? All trending in the right direction, knowing that, okay, if someone has an off night, you call someone else's name, someone else's number, and you're not necessarily going to see an extremely steep drop-off in terms of what you're getting. Am I saying Kyle Cuff is J.J. Starling? Heck no. Don't get into it. That is not what I'm saying. But at the same token, being able to rely on different guys and sort of have that ace up your sleeve, that's something that Syracuse has shown they can do time and time again.
Guys come off the bench, and they're not lacking in energy. They're engaged. They're ready. They know the scheme. They know how to get open shots. The drop-off isn't there, as you said, Johnny, but the energy is, and it's not, It's above and beyond. And I think we talked about this when we discussed Quadir after the Oregon game. Just the energy that he brings and the enthusiasm that he brings to the floor is what Syracuse needs sometimes when the offense slows down, when the ball gets stuck in someone's hand. You need that sort of person who's not afraid to create and also make a mistake every once in a while, because Quadir will make mistakes, but at least they're fun to watch.
Yeah, you got to take the good with the bad.
There's never a Quadir mistake where I throw my hands up in the air. At least it's entertaining. It is sure as heck entertaining, and that's something that I really do enjoy, and I think really brings some light to Syracuse basketball that's been missing over the past year or two when we talk about the SU offense. All right, let's zoom out here a little bit, and let's bring in Mike Waters, our conversation with him coming up. We roll on here on Red is the New Orange, a Field of 68 podcast. Ian Unsworth, Johnny Gadamwitz with you as always. You can follow us on Twitter, F68_Cuse. And we are joined by the Oracle of Syracuse basketball. He's been writing about it for longer than Johnny and I have been around on this earth. Mike Waters of the Post Standard and Syracuse.com. Thank you so much for taking some time, Mike.
Happy to join you guys. It's great to talk basketball. I don't know about the Oracle part. Maybe old, but I'll take Oracle. We'll go with a good Matrix reference.
Does Scribe? I didn't want to go for Scribe, so I went for Oracle instead. But one of the two has to suffice.
Well, we'll take Oracle. A scribe sounds more like Red Smith or Grantland Rice, right?
Yeah, those guys were constantly writing. You do everything now. So with that in mind, we wanted to put you, I guess, on the stand and put you in the confidence meter. So we're going to give Mike some statements here about Syracuse basketball's non-conference slate, what he's seen and heard from Red Autry thus far, and he will rate it with the confidence meter, 5 being supremely confident that whatever take we Mike will hold up, and if it's a 1, Mike's not so confident. So we'll start here. Syracuse had some big wins over the non-conference, whether it's LSU in the ACC SEC Challenge, first ever, whether it's Georgetown on the road against Ed Cooley, or Oregon in South Dakota, of all places. But Mike, how confident are you that those non-con big wins hold up when it comes tourney time?
Probably around a 1.5 or 2.
Ooh, not a good start.
Well, even right now, if you look at the net rankings, only one of those wins is above quad 3. I mean, Oregon is a quad 2 win right now. Georgetown is not having a great season. It was good to get a win on the road against a team from a Power 6 conference. So that's nice, but I think right now it's a quad 3 or quad 4 win. LSU similarly is not having a great year, and since that win came at home, again, it's another good win. It's a team that's got a recognizable name and everything. And the other part of that Oregon one is like right now, of course, Syracuse fans are going to be hoping that Oregon gets healthy and gets better and improves over the course of the year.
They're not getting healthy.
Well, we have to hope some of those kids come back because you need Oregon to do well. You need Oregon to at least keep that win in the quad 2 sector. I think at the beginning of the year, you were probably thinking, yeah, if you beat Oregon on a neutral floor, that's going to be a quad 1 win. So, it's given us a little bit of indication of where Syracuse might be. But in terms of their NCAA tournament resume, so far, maybe only the Oregon game's the only one that's really going to move the meter.
And of course, a whole lot can happen between now and then. But Mike, sort of, looking still in the rearview mirror as far as these games that have occurred and what we've seen unfold from this team so far. Me and Ian have discussed this on this podcast before, where it sort of feels like a lot of these games, you rewind earlier in the year, Colgate, even before that, Canisius, right? Maybe weren't as sweat-free as some Orange fans might have hoped. How confident are you in this team's ability to sort of rise above and play above its level of competition moving forward?
Again, I'm going to split here, and I'm only at about a 2.5. You're right. We sort of forget some of those games that really weren't all that long ago. You mentioned the Colgate game and the Canisius game. Syracuse had their struggles. Similarly, the way they handled Niagara didn't instill you with a lot of confidence. Didn't instill me with a lot of confidence. They let Niagara hang around. Adrian Autry was not a particularly happy man after that one. He didn't like the way his team handled a double-digit lead going down the stretch. If you let a team like Niagara hang around, then how are you going to put an ACC team away? How are you going to battle an ACC team down to the final horn? Really, they haven't been in a lot of close games. It's either been a nice, easy win. I mean, even the Georgetown game, they handled down the stretch. LSU, they, blew LSU's doors off. They beat Oregon pretty badly. I mean, the one game where I think they showed me something was being able to come back from 24 points down against Colgate. Now, the bad side is you were down 24 points to Colgate. The good news is you came back. And really, at this point, 12 games in, that's the game where they saved their season so far. We're still discussing things like, can they get to the NCAA tournament? Can they work themselves onto the bubble? Where are they exactly? Had they lost that Colgate game, we'd be talking a lot differently.
The Niagara game also, I think, exemplifies something that's really shifted this year is Coach Autry's willingness to talk about the bad and be more free with it. At least from our perspective, going to press conferences last year as students, there was always a bit of a contentiousness between Coach Boeheim and all of us and, some of you guys as well in the professional media sphere. But this year, Coach Autry seems just to be more open, which I do get a kick out of. And especially coming in saying, we didn't play well, but look, I'm going to lay it out there on the table and have no bones about it instead of working our way around things.
Your all's experience with Jim Boeheim might be a little bit more limited than mine.
Yes, absolutely.
Jim could be very critical of his team and his players, and he would offer some harsh criticism. Adrian Autry's criticism the other day against Niagara was a fair and honest critique, but he didn't get real harsh, and he didn't get personal with any particular player. Jim could. And Jim was the ultimate contrarian. If he came into a press conference and the question came from one of us about how poorly the team played, or, hey, were you happy with the way the team, played down the stretch when we all know they didn't play well down the stretch, he would give us the opposite point of view. He wouldn't want us to be critical of the team. That was his job. So if we were critical of the team, then he would defend. And we used to do that dance a lot with Jim. Or if we were complimentary, then he would be critical. That Adrian Autry press conference after the Niagara game, he set the tone. He came out. It was his opening statement. I think I loved his opening line where he said, well, this is going to be a little different today. Because up until then, he had not really come into a post-game press conference and been really down, critical of his team. But he was still upset with the way they had played down the stretch. And sometimes coaches, Jim was great at this. He would talk to his team through the media. He would set a narrative. He wanted messages to get back to the locker room. He knew the TVs were on in the locker room. He knew the team sometimes was hearing what he was saying to us down the hall in the workroom, in the media workroom, right? So he knew what he was doing. I don't know if Adrian was actually doing that. He's new to all this. Jim was pretty savvy about it. And sometimes we didn't really understand all of Jim's methods. Sometimes when we're like, man, was he really, critical? We're like, he meant to be. He wanted to be, because he's driving that message home. Something he probably told the team in the locker room, but then it hits a little different when he's saying it to others too.
It definitely always felt very calculated and, as if there was sort of a purpose behind everything. And it's similar, I think it's a similar narrative with Autry too, obviously just in a little bit of a different facet. Mm-hmm. Mike, something that's been well documented about this team so far here is we know Judah Mintz is a superstar. Where does Syracuse get its production after that? So next up on our confidence meter for you here, we'll ask you this. How confident are you in the emergence of kind of a bona fide secondary scorer as conference play gets underway?
Being a tough grader here, I'm probably going to go somewhere between a 3.5. We haven't seen one player step into that sidekick role. I hate the sidekick, like Batman and Robin. And I actually used that trope about a week or two ago before the Niagara game, looking for that number 2 scorer to Mintz, where Judah has been there pretty consistently. It's really, I think, just the Chaminade game, and there was another game where he was in Virginia, of course. Now, Chaminade didn't hold him to single digits. Judah chose to be in single digits that day. Virginia was a tough day for him. So really, out of 12 games, he's had one bad game. That's pretty consistent. And your one bad game is on the road against the best defensive team in the conference, against the best on-the-ball defender in the conference. Tough day, whatever. Let's move along. That second guy, they've been getting guys to step in there, but it's not been one guy. Some days it's Chris Bell. Some days it's J.J. Starling. Once or twice early in the year, it was Justin Taylor. So, who is that second guy going to be? The other day against Niagara, it was Malik Brown of all people. So it's good in a way that they're getting different guys who can do it. Would I be a little bit more comfortable to see one of these guys do it on a more consistent basis? Yes. I think that's why I'm hanging around a 3.5 here. I do like the fact that they got different guys who can contribute. But JJ's starting to get closer to consistent level of play after some bumps early on. Chris Bell didn't have a good game the other night. He's definitely still up and down in terms of his scoring. But, on a given night, Chris Bell can get you 20, 24 points. But, again, I'd like to see consistency. And we got to remember, too, these guys are all sophomores. And while a lot of them did play a good bit last year, consistency is usually the last thing that comes to college basketball players. And usually that's for a lot of guys, unless you're just at a different level and you get there as a freshman, and that's rare. It's that sophomore season where you begin to see consistency. So let's see what happens here as we turn the page on the new year.
And I guess you could go ahead and throw Justin Taylor in that conversation too. And Mike, just to sort of follow up on that, I guess sort of the natural follow-up then would be, do you think that kind of revolving door, that taking turns, so to speak, of whose turn it's going to be, to be that 1B or number 2, whatever you want to call it, in your eyes, is that a sustainable formula? I know obviously you said the consistency preferable, but to what extent is that okay kind of moving forward, the nature of that revolving door?
I liked being, a versatile team, having an offense that's got a little variety, multiplicity to it, not just one or two guys. If you're relying all the time on two guys and one guy gets shut down, you're going to lose. Now, if the other team comes out and they want to ball hawk Chris Bell and take him completely out of the equation, it's kind of nice knowing, well, we can get scoring from Justin Taylor or JJ Starling. I think JJ's the one I'm looking at that I think is closer to that consistent level, that he can get there. And you put aside those first 4 or 5 games out of the season when he was struggling from 3-point range. Now that he's hitting a few here and there, he's looking good. So I like the idea of saying, okay, the other team's got a game plan to take away guy A or B or whoever. We can hurt him here. There's something else we can do. And I think the only guy Syracuse, can't win without is Judah.
And listening to the TK99 broadcast of that Niagara game, one thing Tim Leonard brought up, which I don't think has been discussed that much in the Syracuse sphere, is JJ's shoulder problems last year and how much they changed his shot and sort of just affected his mindset as a scorer at Notre Dame. And so that was interesting for me to consider, kind of zooming out and rethinking JJ's role. And now that he's getting back to shooting a bit more consistently, maybe he takes that big jump forward as he finds his shot.
Yeah, I agree. My colleague at Syracuse.com, Donna Ditota, new Hall of Famer, by the way.
Yes. Yeah.
She wrote about JJ's injuries last year at Notre Dame and how it had impacted his shot. And he had been struggling to find his old form again. And it's hard to do, but, you really have to break things down. I mean, I think that's why we all marveled years ago when Tiger Woods rebuilt, his stroke. You just don't do things like that. And that's what JJ is having to do. Now, to see him go 1 for 18 from 3-point range to start the season was a little shocking. But since then, he's really been knocking him down. And I still don't know if the shot looks exactly right. But if they're going in, that's a good sign. And but I saw JJ play in high school, going back to his freshman and sophomore year at Baldwinsville High School before he left the area and went out to La Lumiere out in Indiana for his last couple of years. When JJ was a freshman, sophomore in high school, he shot the crap out of the ball. He was a great shooter. I mean, I don't know who I could liken him to, but he could just pull up and stroke it. So it was shocking to me to see where his shot was. And I think a lot of it did have to do with the shoulder injury that he went through in his freshman year at Notre Dame.
He's definitely shooting with more confidence and he's not thinking as much. So that's a big step forward.
Yeah, that's what he told Donna too. He said he was in his head.
Yeah.
When you get off to that kind of a start, who else it happened? It happened to Buddy Boeheim his freshman year. Buddy Boeheim, of all people, maybe, one of the best shooters in Syracuse history. I forget what he was his freshman year to begin that year. And he said the hardest part was stop thinking about it. because you get off to that kind of a start, you know you're thinking about it, and oh geez, I'm 1 for 8 from 3-point range. If I make my next one, I'll be at 20%. When you can actually do the percentages in your head, it's not a good thing.
Moving down low, Mike, there's clearly been a split in minutes between Naheem McLeod and Malik Brown, and to anyone watching, clearly one has been better than the other. And maybe that hasn't been the preseason outlook that Syracuse fans thought they'd get. When it comes to ACC play, how confident are you that the Orange can hold their weight down low?
Good question. God, where do I want to put this one? 3? I'm thinking 3. I am not as down on Naheem as a lot of people. And yeah, Malik's got some better offensive numbers. Of course, he's coming off a great game against Niagara, 15 points, 6 of 6 from the field, actually made a 3. That was interesting. He's more athletic. He can do a little bit more for you defensively, but here's the thing. He's been
great defensively. He's like top 20 in the country in steal rate per KenPom, which is nuts for a big.
Yeah, he's tied with Judah Mintz for 3rd in the ACC in steals. And I looked this up the other day at the request of a reader. The last time you had a Syracuse player averaging more than 2 steals a game and more than 2 offensive rebounds. And he asked me about those 2 statistical areas because those create extra possessions for you, right? An offensive rebound, extra possession. Steal, it's an extra possession. So two steals and 2 offensive rebounds a game. He's doing that right now. The last guy to do it was Todd Bergen as a senior in 1998. So it's those little bitty stats that you don't, hidden stuff that can really swing a game. And, maybe can at some point swing a tight, close game. If Malik Brown gives you 2 extra possessions or 3 extra possessions, it can help a team that sometimes struggles in the half court. Some of those times are times when you get an easy bucket and you're not going up against the other team's half court defense. Going back to the original question of the centers, don't discount Naheem McLeod. It doesn't result in statistics when you take up space. It doesn't result in a real statistic that's easy to see when just by staying between your man and the bucket and putting your hands up, he misses the shot, right? And how many misses has Naheem forced when he's just in there? Now, is it frustrating sometimes to see a guy of his size get out jumped for a rebound? Yeah, but at 7'4" and he doesn't really have that quick twitch muscle, and he's a big guy, he's going to get beat off the floor sometimes for a rebound. Is it frustrating? Yes. Naheem's job then is to turn around and once again get between the guy and the basket and put your hands up. And sometimes that putback basket doesn't go in either. He's in his limited minutes, he's ranking like 4th or 5th in the ACC in blocks. And there's going to come a time when you're going to want his big body out there to stay between Armando Bacot and the basket, or DJ Burns and the basket, or Quentin Post of Boston College. Now, Quentin will be a challenge. He likes to step out every once in a while. But I tell you what, it's 7 foot tall. When he goes inside, Naheem McLeod's going to be the guy you're going to call upon. The other thing, too, it gives Syracuse a chance to use up some fouls. Big guys get called for fouls. Big guys get called for fouls early in the game, too, when the referees want to, quote-unquote, set the tone. I don't want to start Malik Brown undersized at center against Armando Bacot and have Malik pick up 2 fouls before the 16-minute mark. Let Naheem get in there, push back on Armando. And you know what? If you go inside Naheem just once or he gets an offensive rebound and goes up and Armando wants to hack him on the arm, great. Foul on Bacot. But yeah, while the referee sorts out those first 4 or 5 minutes, let Naheem do the dirty work. And I still think I like the tandem. I like having different guys. And another guy to watch that center combination. When he's feeling good, when the back's not bothering him, Munir Hema can help. And he proved that in that Georgetown game. He's a little bit more athletic than Naheem, but he's just as good a shot blocker. And I think there'll be another game or 2 down here over the course of the season where Munir's going to help. So then you have 3 guys and 15 fouls.
Moving right along here on Red is the New Orange, as always, Johnny Gadamowitz, Ian Unsworth with you. We're joined by Mike Waters of Syracuse.com. And Mike, maybe every Syracuse fan's new favorite player over the course of these last couple of games appears to be Quadir Copeland. We'd be remiss if we didn't ask you about him. To what extent, how confident are you, per se, that Copeland is not just a flash in the pan here, but somebody who can really kind of do this consistently and be a true option on this team.
I'm getting there. I like Quadir just as much as anybody else who watches him. When he's going good and providing energy, he's as fun to watch as any Syracuse player that comes to mind in recent memory. I thought going into the season he was going to be a key guy in terms of what Red Autry was going to do defensively. He wanted to play man-to-man. He wanted to be up-tempo, wanted to be aggressive. And Quadir can guard 3, sometimes 4 positions without having to worry about it being at a disadvantage. He can guard point guards, guard 2s and 3s are obvious. He can guard them. And he's at 6'6" and pretty well built. He can hold his own against the power forward. Maybe not for an entire game, but for half an offensive possession if he gets switched. That's okay. He's good. And that helps you play that way. To see what he's helping him do offensively is a little bit of a surprise. And he really hasn't shown the development in the three-point shot that the coaches tell us they see in practice. They say it's coming. But even without knocking down some threes, he's creating some stuff on offense. Of course, his assists are amazing. His turnovers are frustrating. I want to see him do it against a good team. He kind of epitomizes Syracuse, this team in general. We got to get to the point in the season where we know a little bit more about him. And, to this point, Quadir has played good against the bad teams and not great against the really good ones, kind of like Syracuse. Syracuse hasn't lost to anybody bad, but have they really beaten anybody good? Because even that Oregon team, as we talked about at the start, they're down a few guys. So where are we as a team, Syracuse? Where is Quadir as a player? We'll find out real soon.
Well, we certainly know where Judah Mintz is. I think now 4 or 5 games in a row, they've regurgitated the stat about him just being just behind Zach Edey in fouls drawn and free throws made. And we know he can get to the bucket. We know he can score. But Mike, last but not least here, how confident are you that Judah can win ACC Player of the Year?
Oh,
he's going up against the likes of RJ Davis, who's been nuts over the past few weeks. You got the PJ Halls. Blake Hinson's taken every shot he can find every time he catches the ball. And you mentioned Quentin Post earlier, and you can't sleep on him.
As great a season as Judah is having, unless Syracuse moves into the top 4 or 5 teams in the league, I think it's going to be hard for him to get that kind of an award. Is he all conference? In my opinion, yes. Right now, he's easily first team all ACC. To get that Player of the Year thing and knowing that you got a Southern-based voting block, shall we say, how do you edge out a RJ Davis at Carolina or a PJ Hall if either of those teams are top 3 in the league? How do you beat out a Kyle Filipowski? If Duke wins the league. I go back to last year's ACC Freshman of the Year voting. I voted for Judah Mintz, Freshman of the Year. I'll say it to whoever, I got into Twitter arguments with people who said I was a homer or didn't know what I was talking about. And I'm like, listen, I know Filipowski had a great year. Judah numbers were either equivalent or maybe even a titch better. And that's why I went with Judah. Because he was also having to do it as a freshman on a team that was struggling for a little bit part of the year. Filipowski was playing with a bunch of other McDonald's All-Americans around there. But, people wanted to argue with me, and that's fine and dandy. But just knowing the way that'll go, PJ Hall's having a great year. And if Clemson continues to roll, he deserves it. He would deserve the award the way PJ Hall's playing right now. And same with some of these other guys, all the guys you mentioned. Filipowski, RJ Davis, PJ Hall, Quentin Post, Blake Hinson, Judah Mintz. I think, we're leaving out Reese Beekman. And his scoring numbers aren't going to be up there with these other guys, but that's because of the way Virginia plays. But, Syracuse already played Virginia down there. Everybody, we all saw how good Reese Beekman is, right? You watch a basketball game with him playing in it, and you're like, yeah, I think I found the best guy on the floor.
And it doesn't take very long either to figure that out.
So with all that being said, Mike Waters is somewhat confident on Syracuse's ability to keep on scoring, very confident in the big men and somewhat on Quadir Copeland. But for the team as a whole, you want to see more.
Yeah. We're at the halfway point, or not even the halfway point. So, what? I hate midterm grades. they've got a shot. They haven't hurt themselves yet.
It's the progress report.
That's what it is. Yeah, there you go.
So, Mike, we'll check in with you after the full season. We can certainly update these things and put A's and B's. I don't know, maybe there's an F out there somewhere.
Let's hope there's no F's. We don't like F's. And we'll also have to burn this tape so we don't all look like idiots, especially me.
Well, I guess that's part of the gig. And you know what, Mike? Either way, the laughs are totally worth it. Thanks so much for joining us.
It was a pleasure, guys. Y'all have a good one. Happy New Year.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Mike.
Happy New Year.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook for this college basketball season. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks and predictions throughout the college basketball season. And we are going to have special offers for you, the listeners and the viewers on the Field of 68 each and every week during the season. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FIELD1500 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager on BetMGM Sportsbook. Here's what you got to do. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD1500. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FIELD1500 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient for me when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly. When crossing state borders, just log into your existing account instead of having to create new accounts in each state that you go to. And most importantly, I got to let you know, we do have some fun stuff coming up for this college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boosts, my personal favorite, parlay odds boosts. So download the BetMGM app today.
Very insightful stuff from Mike Waters. Always great to hear from someone who has been around the Syracuse program for that long and knows it inside and out. Johnny, we didn't get to ask him that much about Pittsburgh, but that is the Orange's next contest. It's on December 30th. It tips off at noon in the Dome. And if you're looking for it, you can't find it. It's because it's on the CW. So, you take the good with the bad, the ACC. And since, Bally Sports, whatever, or you can't put games on Yes anymore.
I was going to say, are there still games on Yes? Yeah.
I fondly remember the Yankee game. Well, not the Yankees network hosting Syracuse basketball.
It would go from Yankees hot stove right into Cuse hoops.
Whatever works. I mean, as long as the game's on TV and it's not on ESPN Plus, I have no reason to complain. Trying to watch that Wagner football game a couple of years ago that was
tough to navigate.
That was the headache of my life because that was back before I had ESPN Plus, and I was searching for every stream I could find in the book, and nobody had it because it was Syracuse and Wagner. But anyways, back to the topic at hand here. We talked about the non-conference wins not being so great. Well, Pittsburgh is going to be the best team Syracuse can compete with on their schedule thus far. I think we can both agree that the Orange weren't ready to throw punches with Tennessee and kind of got run off the floor by Gonzaga there. But Syracuse can really hang with Pittsburgh because Pitt's game is all predicated on the three-point shot. Over 45% of Pitt's field goals come from behind the arc. And they shoot 35% as a team, which is in 110th, I think, in the country. So it's not a team that is super efficient, but almost hearkening back to Cornell, Johnny, they're going to take almost the first shot they can get. And Blake Hinson, as we mentioned, can really knock it down if you give him space. And if he heats up, you better watch out because he could torch Syracuse.
It definitely helps the Orange that they've seen Cornell to get that kind of similar style of play and know what they're going up against so it doesn't come as a surprise. But Ian, I look at these two teams, they're pretty similar right now. I mean, right? Both in that kind of mid-tier of the conference as far as what they've done so far, taking care of business against the teams that they're supposed to and maybe struggled against the teams you expected them to struggle against. They both had wins over Canisius right around the same margin. SU beat Canisius by 12. Pitt beat Canisius by 11. You look at the makeup of this Pitt team and a Pitt team that Syracuse is going to see now twice over the course of the next few weeks. They'll play on December the 30th, as you mentioned, and then again coming up in a couple of weeks at the Pete in mid-January. But I think for Syracuse, this is a game you can go out there and you can make a statement, right? Because it's a winnable game. It's not against a top-tier conference opponent, but it's a game that, okay, you go out there, you show what you can do, you find a way to grab a win on home court after a layoff that gets everybody to rest up, get those legs fresh and ready to roll. Particularly when you talk about the schedule the Orange have coming up, Ian, which we have documented in terms of some tough opponents looming large in the very near future. I think this is a win that might not seem like a lot surface level. Still January, haven't even flipped the calendar yet. One of the early conference games, kind of that weird time, students home on break. I think this win could speak volumes if Syracuse goes out there and finds a way to get it done.
I don't want to overlook Pitt, Johnny, because you make it sound like this is a game that Syracuse can and maybe should win. No, Pitt beat the brakes off Syracuse.
Not should, but can. Definitely can.
But Pitt, we should acknowledge that Pitt beat the crap out of Syracuse last year. That was when the Orange were on their historic season downslide, giving up 90 points to anyone that walked in the gym, including probably JD's JV team. But Pitt still is going to score. They are going to run. Almost every game they've played has been in the 80s, except for a clunker against the Fighting John Nolan's Indiana-Purdue Fort Wayne. That was a 62-48 win on December 20th. And we've kind of talked about how those games go. You know, no one's in the stands, right? Everyone is ready to go home for Christmas and the holidays. So now the students won't be back, but Pitt comes to the Dome, where it won by 2 last year, and has to rely on a freshman point guard. We should make this a point of interest here. Carlton Carrington is really good. He is a very good player. He dishes the ball very well. He has about 30% of Pitt's assists on the year. Not a huge score. His scoring numbers have tailed off going against better competition. And he only scored 5 against South Carolina State of all teams. As someone who lives in a MEAC and calls games for a MEAC team, I can tell you, South Carolina State, nothing to be too afraid of. But Carlton Carrington is big. He's long. He's 6'5". And I would assume that he's probably getting some defensive responsibility when it comes to handling Judah Mintz. I don't know how much, but if he draws a couple fouls, if Judah gets after him early, then that's a huge advantage because Jeff Capel's freshman point guard is no longer running their offense.
He also really prioritizes taking care of the basketball, which is impressive when you consider how much this guy does have the ball in his hands, Ian. Turns it over under two times per game.
Yeah, he's only played 12 of them in his college career.
Right, which you don't see a lot as a freshman. A lot of time that's part of the freshman growing pains, right? You turn the ball over. Not the case with this kid whatsoever. I look elsewhere up and down this Pitt roster. I mean, we talked about Hinson. He's the guy to know. I'm curious to see what the defensive philosophy for Syracuse is going to be to try to limit Hinson and try to shut him down. Like, who are you throwing on Blake Hinson from a body standpoint to try to limit his success? And if plan A doesn't work, how quick are you to pull the trigger to go to plan B, plan C, or do you just stick to your formula and acknowledge that, okay, look, this guy is going to find a way to put the ball in the cup no matter what we throw at him?
I don't want to Jordan rules Blake Hinson. Syracuse should not be doing that. But at the same time, this is not a game. This is not a zone game. This is not a zone game for Syracuse. You have to play man-to-man, and you just have to stick with it. Even if some of the stuff, like, even if Hinson gets some buckets, I think you have to stick with man-to-man and just run guys at him if need be. This would be a great game for Benny Williams to decide that he is ready to lock it in on defense.
Correct. Because
physicality-wise,
Chris Bell locking down Blake Hinson for north of 20 minutes?
No, but physicality-wise and just like body build-wise, Benny is best equipped to deal with Hinson, who's 6'8", 230, and kind of looks like a running back, if we're being completely honest. Like, he is very solidly built and has wide shoulders. Like, he can get past people just by, walking like Vince McMahon down to the ring. So I think that's where Benny could really be big time. Down low, the Diaz-Graham brothers, we talked about them. They're going to play volleyball. They're going to block shots. They're going to rebound, too, which really concerns me, especially if they're on the floor at the same time. Naheem McLeod is big, but
Pitt also brings Federico to the table, which is a name that should sound familiar too. He was on.
He started last year, yeah,
right, and he's starting this year too. He started 10 of the 12 games that he's played in. So this is a Pitt team that has a lot of size. Rarely will you see the Diaz-Graham twins, Hinson and Federico all out there at the same time. That would be an ugly lineup. But at the same token, this is a team that has some serious size, and Syracuse, I'm not sure they've played a team this big all year yet, Ian, right? So could be a really intriguing game to see what is going to happen if McLeod is struggling. Probably not going to see a ton of Malik at the 5 this game just because of the nature of how this Pitt team is built. I'm keying in on Benny too.
Hema and Benny.
Yeah, totally.
As you know, Mike hit it on the head. Munir Hema is a guy that'll give you good minutes, and he's an active shot blocker and rebounder. That's about what you need against the Diaz-Graham brothers, who might shoot a couple threes, but mainly they're in there to catch lobs and rebound. So you just need someone that can thwart a lob or two and rebound. Same thing goes for Federico. Not a post scorer, nothing of that nature. Those guys are just there to be big. So Syracuse has to limit that and stop Hinson. And if all that goes well, I think the Orange can score with Pitt. I'm not too concerned about that, but definitely concerned about the size and the 3-point shooting.
This is a game where we might need to see Syracuse prove to us and to everybody else that they are capable of getting some big stops down the stretch. Yeah. Right? We haven't seen them excel in that department yet. We haven't really seen a game all too much where Syracuse has needed big stop after big stop, defensively putting the clamps down with under 2 minutes to go. This very well could be one of those games.
And you can't just throw the press at Pitt like you did at Colgate and hope that the freshman point guard coughs it up. So very interesting contest. Second ACC game, but this really begins conference play for the Orange. A noon tip-off on Saturday, and we will catch you up on our thoughts and recap the action next Monday. Thanks for sticking with us here to the end. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Mike. He was fantastic as always, and we hope you enjoyed the game on Saturday. For Johnny Gadamwitz, Ian Unsworth signing off. Drop us a follow, F68_Cuse, and make sure to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Enjoy your weekend. Happy holidays. Happy New Year, and go Orange.